I thought it might be more interesting to talk about what I've learned than just reminisce, in part because I record all these meetings, and this will be a final Rise and Shine talk. I think Toastmasters is the largest and most effective group help organization that's ever been worldwide. It's just astounding. And I've been thrilled to be a Toastmaster for the last 17 years and many more years to come. Sadly, won't be with Rise and Shine, but with other clubs as the opportunity arises. So I thought about what I've learned over those 17 years. And most of what I've learned has been in Rise and Shine, Club 3505, because it was my first club and because of my first mentor, Blake McDaniel. Much of what I will talk about in the next few minutes, I learned as much from him as from anyone. Now, I've given everyone by email a handout. It's also here on paper, together with some Swiss chocolate back there, Brett. So I'm not going to belabor these 10 points. I'm just going to go through them. And one of what I'm trying to do here is to share with other people tonight and anyone who listens to this recording, just the breadth of things one can learn by being in this organization. So, point one, you want to become unconsciously competent, which was Blake's language for being automatic with a skill, so that the various skills you learn, Toastmasters, or for that matter, anything else, are ones that you use automatically. It's one thing to prepare a speech and you say, oh, I'm going to be 3 millimeters here and 4 millimeters this way and so forth, so on. Great, wonderful for canned presentations. But what really counts with communication skills is what you do day in and day out. Answering questions, interacting with people. What skills are you using there? So you want to make them things that you're very competent with, but you just do it automatically, unconsciously. Point two, you can learn humor, even if you're an engineer, even if you're not naturally funny. The essence of humor is you've got a setup, a twist, a surprise. The rule of three is basically an example of that, where you have two things that are the same or related, and then a surprise, something two bigs and a small, two smalls and a big, whatever it might be. But all of humor boils down to shocking or surprising the audience with a twist. Point three, of all the different Toastmaster arguments and persuasion and flyers and pamphlets that we have out there, I believe there's something that's missing. And that is the power we learn in Toastmasters to observe, to listen. Over time, I would hope that as much as we speak in our daily lives, we're listening, we're observing. If you're a speaker, whether it's one-on-one, in front of a big audience, the more you can observe your audience, which is a form of observation, of course, the better you're going to read them and you can react real time. Like, if you observe this, then you know you've got a problem. So observe people. And we learn this by doing evaluations of speakers during our meetings. But it's so effective, whether I'm watching someone on television or my girlfriend or anybody else, to use the observation and listening skills that I've learned in Toastmasters. Point four, you don't have to be a sitting duck in question and answer, whether it's question and answer after you give a talk or chatting with someone in an interview or any place else. most of our daily life interactions are in some sense question and answer. You don't have to just take it. You can prepare. There's a variety of things. It's in a handout that I've included. The link to the handout is in this handout. So you don't have to suffer deer in the headlights. You can prepare for question and answer. And I encourage people to do that. In Toastmasters, we call that table topics. And I must learn something about it because I ended up being district champion in table topics. So you can prepare for question and answer. Point 5. And this I really learned from Blake. It's not something that you found in various Toastmaster pamphlets and in projects and manuals. You want your audience to be emotionally. We talk about vocal variety and body language and all these sorts of things. But other than the most boring possible technical talk, there's a need to consider emotions. Where do you want your audience to be? Whether you're writing, by the way, a story, or speaking, do you want to take them up, bring them down, bring them back up? Plot out on paper or in your mind, where do you want your audience to be emotionally at different parts of your talk? And recognize that people can't really deal with this emotionally. So plan a smooth transition. Sometimes you want to shock them in the sad direction. Sometimes you want to shock them with some glorious uplifting point. But recognize that you're trying to take your audience on some emotional journey. And if you're more likely to be successful in taking them on that emotional journey if you know what journey you're trying to take them on. So plot it out in some sense. Know where you want your audience to be emotionally. And then use the various skills, body language, words, vocal variety to affect that change emotionally. Point 6. I learned early in Toastmasters the adage that every time you speak, there are 3 speeches. The speech you plan to give, the speech you gave, the speech you wish you had given afterwards. Great, wonderful, not complete. Why is it not complete? Those 3 things are all about you, the speaker. Guess what? Who cares? What matters is the audience. So point 4 is, what did the audience see, feel, experience, hear? That's not enough. Point 5 is, what did they remember? You stop speaking 5 minutes later, 5 hours later, 5 days later, 5 weeks later. What do they remember? Whether it's a speech in front of 1,000 people or interacting at work, whatever it is, what do they remember? And the real zinger is, what did they enact? So what did the audience gather during your speech? What do they remember? And then what do they do about it, if anything? So recognize that these are all aspects of every time you speak. One-on-one, one-on-many, doesn't matter. What is going to be remembered? And fortunately, there are some things you can do in your daily speeches, daily interactions, as well as prepared speeches, that will increase being memorable. And that's a whole nother speech to talk about that. Point 7. One of the early Toastmaster manuals used to talk about the fact that there are 4 purposes of any speech: entertain, persuade, motivate, inform. And as I learned and practiced and thought about those 4 types of speeches, I eventually realized they all involve change. If I'm informing you, I'm trying to change what you know about it. If I persuade you, I'm trying to change your position. Instead of this option, I want you over here. If I'm trying to motivate you, I'm trying to change your level of engagement or commitment. So maybe you already agree with the position I want you to agree with, that's persuasion. But maybe I want you to get a lot more excited about selling widgets or treating your dog right or whatever it might be. So that's increasing your commitment, your energy on something. What about that 4th one? Entertain. What are we really doing when we entertain? For a brief shining moment, instead of whatever problems you're focused on today, whatever happened when you woke up this morning and all the worries that you had during the day, when we're entertaining someone, we're changing their focus from whatever those problems are to what we're sharing. Humorous story, dramatic story, whatever it might be. I'm really trying to change the focus from something else to the here and now, to whatever the topic and story is that we're presenting. Point 8. For most of my 17 years in Toastmasters, I've also written columns for the Post Register. And I've certainly had all manner of technical presentations, technical writing, many of which are quite sleep-inducing. Over the years, I have sometimes taken possible columns for the Post Register and present them in a Toastmaster meeting. And I've gone in both directions. First writing and then speech, other times speech, and then the final column. So I've been playing around with the similarities and differences between the written word and the spoken word. There's some key differences. Now, a lot of things like descriptive language are helpful in both spheres. But vocal variety, we need to remember, is the only way we can do punctuation. In writing, I've got paragraphs, I've got commas and semicolons and all kinds of things that I probably do wrong most of the time. But when I'm speaking, none of those are visible. All we can do is use our voice, our timing, our pauses, so that we are giving structure to what our audience is hearing. Point 9. There's different ways to prepare for a speech. And I eventually realized as a Toastmaster, this person always wrote everything out word for word. This person always just wrote it in their heads as they were driving to the Toastmaster meeting, stoplight speech. Other people might be doing slides. Someone else might be just doing bullet points. There's not a right or wrong way. So I had kind of created a campaign for about 2 years. I was deliberately thinking through for each speech I gave, which of these methods might be the most helpful, given whatever the circumstances are. So I've learned and I've tried to implement, and I pass on to you the understanding that there are different ways to prepare, and you need to think about which one is most appropriate for whatever it is you're doing. They're not right or wrong, it's what works in a given circumstance. Point 10, leadership. In the high performance leadership program, the old manual talked and emphasized the difference between learned authority, or earned authority rather, and title. Title is when Director so-and-so and President so-and-so and Senator so-and-so tell you got to do this. Got to do that. They're using their titles. What's more effective as a leader is anytime you've earned the respect, you've earned people following you. And the best example of that, at least in the 20th century that I can think of, was Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhi never had any government or organizational title, period. And yet the man changed the world. He changed the world. He gave birth to the nonviolent movement that then Dr. King picked up. He led India to independence when he felt India was relevant and ready for independence on his terms. Not because he had a title, but because he exhibited the skills of leadership. It was all earned. Again, not by title. So those are 10 things that I've learned in Toastmasters, and they have really, truly changed my life. And I'll leave you with a point, because a few years after I gave my first speech in Toastmasters, called the Icebreaker, was talking about Toastmasters to a non-Toastmaster audience, and decided that as an engineer, the logical thing for me to do was to capture that experience in a point. So here it is. Going back to my first Icebreaker more than 17 years ago in this club. I looked left, I looked right, but my eye contact wasn't right. My voice was flat, quite a bore. Maybe they won't let me speak anymore. Facts and figures, they're a breeze. Humor and stories, I'll just freeze. Any engineer can organize and inform, inspire, and persuade. That's not the norm. But now, after 17 years, I claim to be an engineer that can actually walk and talk and communicate. Thank you, Toastmasters. Back to you, Meg.